purpose of this presentation is to review the new Guide to Rough Times, known as GTRT, and potentially make some decisions about it. What follows can help inform those decisions by giving you an account of the origins of GTRT, what it is, who it's for, why it is like it is, our future aspirations and plans for development. So, a little bit of the history of GTRT. This is how and where it started. And around 5 years later, CPFT made an agreement to take it over and update it. So I'd like to explain a bit about how we approached the task. Taking over responsibility for a Guide to Rough Times was both a privilege because it's a worthwhile endeavour and a responsibility to honour the intention of the original creators and to the teenagers it's meant to help. It started with a long, hard look at the leaflet and the original website. Upon investigation, a lot of the resources and links were found to be out of date and everything needed checking for present-day accuracy, but the graphics and branding had impact and style which we resolved to keep as far as possible by importing it to our new site. The ambition was to take GTRT into a whole new dimension within the self-help section of the Oasis site, with the development of personalisation to make it even more effective in future. Part of this new look was to include multimedia material to complement the written narrative, allow information to be imparted visually and orally as well, and add interest to the look of the page. The inclusion of social media links was another innovation to encourage the participation of our target audience. Who is GTRT aimed at? In its present form, teenagers, but anyone who finds it useful is an added bonus whatever their age. An advanced pre-teen might find parts of it useful, but it was never meant for younger children without serious amounts of adaptation. We are aiming at the main age group who might have to sort things out themselves, who might resist or reject adult interference, however well-intentioned, and wish to preserve their privacy or independence, whereas adult intervention for much younger children might reasonably be forthcoming. We also took a good look at other sites aimed at young people. How did they present their information? How did they pitch the tone and content if they too covered an age range with potentially large variations? How could we offer added value to acknowledged experts already in this field? And not unimportantly, how could we capture and hold the interest of an age group who have notoriously short attention spans at times and who are already potentially alienated from adult advice and quite possibly angry or depressed as well? Well, the answers factored into how GTRT evolved along the way, and it isn't done yet. So what seemed important was to address anything which might be bothering teenagers, and in a way which did not sound patronising or censorious, and to keep the local connection strong. Why is GTRT special? Because it's local for a start, and it puts emphasis on local services. Because it offers the chance for tagging and personalisation to make using it more personal, relevant and effective. Because we're putting together the best and biggest selection we can of other sites and organisations who can help, in turn helping to create the huge and growing resource which is CPFT's online service directory. Because some other trusts think it's important enough to do something similar for their own areas. Because we believe there are teenagers in this area who need what GTRT offers. Because we care. And if GTRT self-help isn't enough, we want CPFT to care for these kids. There was a lot to be inspired by. We found sites where specially trained young people are acting as counsellors to their peers to avoid the issue of whether adults could be trusted or understand. We found emphasis on the confidential nature of contact with sites and helplines, and we found reassurance and abundance that not only were you not alone in your troubles, but that people cared, were there to help, and not to judge or be shocked by anything you could say or want to discuss. Should we segment by age? Obviously, the question needed to be asked. What we found was that an outstanding site such as Childline covers just about everything you could think of, and deals with it in a tone which is pitched right for teenagers whatever their age. They issue the appropriate warnings about legal ages and status, but never suggest that ignoring these puts a teenager beyond the pale, clearly accepting that underage children will need as much, or possibly even more help when troubles strike, precisely because their age will add another dimension to the problem. There is plenty of evidence of pregnant under 16s and underage drinking, for a start. So we decided that we would follow suit for now. Better to have too much information than leave it out when someone might need it. And who are we to decide what problems a child of any age might have? There is no effective way to screen out any curious visitor to the site, whatever their age, and if they want to look up drugs, rape, or only bullying, we can't control their selection. The last thing a person of any age needs is to seek help only to be sent away without finding any, or to be made to feel more miserable and inadequate by perceiving their problems as being dismissed or trivialized. In the future, personalization may help to direct them to what is most relevant, but for now we have to trust them to look for what they need and rely on them finding what is appropriate if it is clearly signposted or searchable. So gtrt addresses a pretty exhaustive range of possible scenarios which teens might have to confront, in the hope that if they turn to us, the search will not return empty, however unlikely or inappropriate the problem. What we also learned from other sites was whilst the kids are mostly used to using computers, they might not discern the need for privacy or safety. Sites handling sensitive issues are furnished with something like a hide this page button and/or advice on how to hide the visit. This is not scaremongering or encouraging furtiveness, but a sensible precaution. So we included this, as we did the simple fact that not everyone has private use of a computer or phone. We also took on board that advice on internet and phone safety was another responsibility not to be shirked, and there is a wealth of information and specific sites to deal with the issues this raises, such as grooming and cyberbullying. We've also looked at things from different angles. Are you having a rough time because you have an addiction? Or are you having one because your mum is an alcoholic? Are you being abused and need to get away from the abuser? Or are you a bully who wants to stop bullying? Are you distraught at the loss of your best friend who committed suicide? Or secretly but massively relieved because your uncle the paedophile has finally snuffed it? We promoted the idea of identifying logical steps to tackling a problem, after becoming aware of a problem, being concerned about it and assessing the urgency for tackling it, investigating the problem and the possible solutions, then making the appropriate decisions and taking action. We also encouraged the notion that it was worth remembering where to find this information, even if there was no need of it now, in case it was needed later on, or to help a friend. Whilst we advised on keeping online visits hidden if it was necessary, we also suggested that in other situations where it didn't jeopardise your safety, leaving gtrt around or even showing it to another person was a possible way of introducing a subject or dropping a hint without having to find the words to tell that person yourself. Teenagers vary enormously. Some are uncommunicative by nature or inclination, some remain chatty and accessible. Some will turn to their parents or carers, others will firmly exclude them, or be excluded by them. Some parents are supportive and approachable, others are firmly unapproachable through lack of interest or caring, others because their own expectations do not allow for their child to have problems and preclude them being confided in. Some are willing to be supportive but lack the necessary knowledge and skills to be effective. But whether they have good or bad parents or carers, we want teenagers to find the help they may not otherwise get, in privacy and safety. But if parents come across gtrt by accident or design, it can't hurt. gtrt was intended to help in rough times. Critics might wonder if it isn't a bit too negative and gloomy, but it can't address what it doesn't acknowledge exists, rough times. So we're mindful of the balance between offering help on all the rough stuff and putting ideas into people's heads or in any way suggesting that this is all the average teenager can expect to suffer. We found great video material which added information as well as a varied method of imparting it and brought some visual interest to the page. We used photos which reflected how our teenage audience having rough times might be feeling and saved the smiley happy people for the positive pages to avoid looking trite about what might seem insurmountable problems at the time, and to give the message that it's quite normal to feel scared or depressed when things get rough, and okay to admit it. The original gtrt stressed taking care of emotional well-being to prevent rough times taking their toll. We've taken that message seriously and reinforced it throughout to include how to get more out of life, and indeed how to put something back in, boost self-esteem, be a good friend, and deal constructively with other people having problems, and how to maximise mental and physical health, as well as just generally making for happier, healthier and better adjusted teenagers, whether or not they experience rough times. And that is how we end the site, on a positive note. So what of the future? The original GTRT also contains help for parents and carers. Because GTRT is placed in the young people age bracket on the Oasis site, we had to leave this out for now, and the present version is only for teenagers. We hope to add a suitably adapted version for younger preteen children and one for our young adults who are no longer teenagers but still subject to many of the same problems, as well as a new GTRT for parents and carers. Meanwhile, there is nothing to stop anyone who is not a teenager using GTRT if they become aware of it. Where is it going from here? Increased personalisation will target search results more accurately based on the information entered. If age is used as one of the criteria, this may help address the segmentation issue, and particularly if GTRT topics are adapted to offer parallel versions for different age groups. We've already spoken about developing and adapting special versions of GTRT for other age groups. We'd like to introduce a magazine-style look and feel to the pages to encourage browsing and make it even more visually appealing. Should it be on a mental health website? We'd like to strengthen the branding and identity of GTRT to make it more memorable and familiar as an independent entity, but ideally leave it where it is, within self-help on the Oasis site. Separating it distances it from mental health issues and bows to the pressure of stigma attached to mental health, and everything we've classed as a rough time necessarily affects well-being and threatens mental health. Balanced against that is the possible reluctance of potential users to visit a mental health website, which highlights the ongoing need to squash stigma. Getting teenagers to realise that rough times can affect their own mental health is another good way to get the message across that it can happen to anyone. But none of this matters if no one sees GTRT or knows it's there. We're sending out 30,000 cards to senior school pupils telling them about it. We hope to get schools involved in promotional and participatory events, such as competitions to design, promote or review content. We'd like very much for teachers and educators to be fully aware of it and at least mention it during assembly or within the PHSE curriculum. We'd like youth groups and advice centres to know about it. We hope to be linked in return to the sites we've linked to, raising our profile and search ranking. How can we keep this up? Without funding there is no future, so it's vital to secure ongoing funding. We've already talked about improving the targeting of information to the user and making it more appealing without compromising on the content. Regular maintenance of the site will ensure an absence of broken links, discontinued helplines, email addresses which don't work, organisations which have ceased to exist, and the rest. Keeping it up to date and relevant is essential. There is always something new or extra coming to light which is worthy of inclusion and will add to the richness of resources, both national and especially local. This is a dynamic and evolving project,